Hi all, and welcome to my channel, Fred Makes Things, and another sewing video for you. We're trying something new. Trying out something new on this channel, for me anyway, and that is these like quilt as you go pre-printed fleece interfacing with fusible back project things. I recently saw these in Joanne Fabrics and I was like, well, those are really cool, and I almost picked some up, but then I didn't. And then Missouri Star Quilt Company, I think that's their name, they were having a sale on these, so I decided to pick up some. So I have a couple of different styles that I'm trying out. There's this pet placemat, right? It's like a little fish. I got two of these, one for upstairs and one for downstairs, and I thought they might work well for the water fountains that we have. Susie likes to kind of dig around and splash in them, and now we have them sitting on plastic placemats, but I thought that having this may be able to absorb some of that water a little bit better. So I got two of these, and then I also got two of these. I have this Charlotte tote, and I have this Alexandra tote as well. I do not remember how much I paid for these, but the numbers will be up on the screen for you. So what I thought I would do is kind of like the vloggy kind of format that I normally do, or that I sometimes do. I don't know. So I thought I'd open this up for you on camera, see what it's all about, and then either walk you through the process or come back and talk about it. I haven't quite decided what I want to do yet, but let's see what this is. So the instructions are right on the back. It says pieces 1 to 9 are 2.5 inches by 6 strips. So I have that, right? 2.5 inches. That's the thickness of a jelly roll. Pieces 10 and 11 are 2 1 3/4 by 18-inch strips. So that's, again, a jelly roll that you can cut down. Pieces 12 and 13 are 2 1 3/4 by 15 inches. So again, cutting down a jelly roll. And backing fabric is 13 by 20. So that's the only one that you would need something larger for. And 13 by 20 actually is smaller than a fat quarter. So you need some jelly roll strips and a fat quarter, basically. They're recommending a starch. We'll see. So yeah, and then they walk you through it, and then finishing. Looks like you need bias strips for this as well. I hate bias strips, but what can you do? And then you just kind of have it already on like this pre-printed batting. So you make that's a decent size. And you make like a decent size like fish. That looks pretty cool. So yeah, I just have to kind of plan out like what colors and stuff that I want to use. I wonder if I could get away. I have a whole bunch of scrap strips and stuff, so I wonder if I should use those up. But anyway, I'm making two. I'm making one for downstairs and one for upstairs. So they're going to look a little bit different in coloring and stuff like that. And like I said, I'm not sure how exactly I'm going to go about talking about this just yet. But yeah, I'll be back. Well, for you in a few seconds. For me, who knows how long. Okay. So I'm back. We're going to do part 3, I guess, or part 2. Part something, assembling the project. Then we're going to talk about it, and then we're going to do final thoughts and sign off. So I don't remember if this is how I started the video. I probably should have looked at it before filming this one, but hey, here you go. It's Halloween. It's like 3:30 on Halloween. So like I have to get this video up for you tomorrow. So yeah, this is just how it's going to be. Anyway, so I will say that assembling this and putting it all together was actually pretty quick in general. First of all, you had to find all of the pieces that you needed, and you needed basically 9 2.5 by 6 inch strips, 2 1 3/4 by 18 inch strips, 2 1 3/4 by 15 inch strips, and a backing fabric of 13 by 20. Which I had. I went through and on the one that I'm using for downstairs, I kind of found a bunch of scraps and made the scraps work to my advantage. It's all scrappy, and then a fat quarter of that beautiful kitten catnip print that we got a couple of months ago in our stash builder box. And then for the second one, the upstairs one, I took some sewing inspiration from a couple of scraps that I had from my second project ever with Sewers Club, which was our third project ever, which is an ironing board caddy. So I took some of that scrap. I had actually ordered more of it, so I used some of the extra yardage that I have for the backing. And then I went to my jelly roll strips because they want them to be 2.5 inches, and that's how wide jelly rolls tend to come in. So I went to the jelly roll strips that I've been working off of since the summer, found some colors that worked, and used those. So all of that has been up on the screen for you to be able to see what it was. And then when I was finished it all, I ran to Joann Fabrics and picked out some bias binding to make it all nice and finished. So they have some notes in here that's like pre-wash fabrics. Didn't do that. Use spray starch to reduce distortion. I didn't do that either. I didn't wash them, so I didn't really, so they still had some of their sizing, like some of their stabilizer coating stuff on them, so I didn't need to starch them. I did iron them though. And then they also said printed lines are placement lines, not sewing lines, and that didn't make any sense to me at first, but then as I was working with it, it did. And they wanted us to use 1/4 inch. So there's only a few actual instructions, and then there's some finishing choices as well. So once everything was cut, everything was planned out, I then laid out my fabrics in the order that I wanted to sew them to the fish. You wanted to cut out so I laid everything out, knew how I was going to go, set that aside, and then they said place wrong side of backing fabric on fusible unprinted side, right? So this batting as you go, you have like your top side with all of your placement numbers, and then you had your underside, which was like a glue fusible side. They wanted you to attach your glue fusible side first, so I did that. Right, so it's your backing fabric to your fusible side. I attached that, and then they wanted you to cut out the shape, which I did. Yeah, so which I did so that you're working with the fish shape right from the beginning, and then your back is attached, and then you're just needing to worry about your top. And then it was kind of just like assembling it by number. So you started at 1 and you sewed number 2 to it, right? You're 1/4 of an inch in. So you lined up your 1 with your 1 marking on your mat. You did 2 face down, right sides touching, sewed your 1/4 inch, opened your 2, then did your 3. They told you to smooth over interfacing finger press seam and pin to hold in place. I just ironed it, right? I have that little iron, the little Oliso that I use, and I just had it sitting next to me like I have been since I set up my upstairs sewing area. And as I finished sections, I just ironed them flat, opened them up and ironed them flat rather than pinning them. Looking back on it, this may have been a mistake, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. So here you can see in this photo here, I've done the first view of the first one to give you an idea of how it all lays out. And then from here on out, you'll be seeing photos, but I don't remember which photos I took. So hopefully me discussing this will line up with some of the pictures that I took. So you started with 1, you did 2, 3, 4, 5, and how it does is like it went opposites on each side, so your 1 is in your center, and then everything grows out from there. And then you place your longer strips on the top and on the bottom, which I did too. On the one that I'm using downstairs, I'm going to refer to it as the blue one. Because I was using scrap materials, I had to kind of mess around with it a little bit, so the lines aren't as perfect or straight as they could have been, and my sections are not, like, especially in my 12 and 13, I've had to layer a couple of different pieces of fabric, so they look a little bit different than what the sample suggests, but I think it looks pretty cool. Then when you're done laying or sewing down all of your fabric, you then cut your fish shape out a second time. And you're basically done. The next step for them is to just bind it and call it a day. So it went really, really quickly. What I did is, because I needed to run to the fabric store with my fish, what I did is I zigzagged all the way around the exterior of the fish to keep my backing layer, my batting, and my top layer together. They don't recommend, or they don't tell you you have to do that. That was just something extra that I did. And then they wanted you to talk about finishing options. They said you could do basic binding. They walked you through how to make bias strips. I said, hell no, not going to do that. So then I just, like I said, I went to Joann Fabrics and found colors. And then they said you could do decorative trim as well. It said zigzag stitch or serge around the perimeter, and then use 60" of decorative trim, sew fabric glue or hot glue in place around top perimeter of placemat. I didn't do that either. I just did bias binding all the way around. So it went really quickly, actually. Honestly, if I was only making one of these at a time, it probably would have only taken me like 2 or 3 hours, especially the upstairs sewing room one, just because I was using pre-cut strips anyway, and so it was really easy to work with it. So I'm sure you want to see what it actually ends up looking like, and here we go. So this is our upstairs one. There's not enough space on the screen for you to see it all, so when I'm done talking about them, I'll insert photos of them so you can see them together. With this one here, this white was my original fabric that I picked from, and then I drew colors from it, right? All of these colors are in here. And yeah, the binding around the outside. This is the backing. I really like the backing, but I really like this fabric. I did a lot of green because, right, we painted the upstairs room green, and there is green in here, and I thought that it would work really well together. It came together really nicely. There were no issues with this one. yeah, and then here's the downstairs one, the gray one. As you can see, I pulled scraps from a few different projects. So we have our kittens, right? That was the fat quarter that was delivered a couple of months ago. Then we've got these two pieces of fabric here. I can't remember what this is called or this, but this was part of the laptop or the tablet case that we did. Then we've got this fruit and this kind of snowy, doughy kind of color. And these came from our original mug rugs that we made last, like June 2022, May 2022, somewhere around there. Right, we did white binding on this. We did like a yellow creamy one on this. And then the back, right, is the kittens. So I think that they look kind of cool. This one here is my favorite. I like the colors, and I think it's going to go really well with my downstairs coloring, right? I have a lot of blue and gray and teal downstairs, so I think it'll look really cool downstairs. Here is them in their full and beautiful glory. The blue one, nicely laid out. Here's the top. Here's the back. And then here's the other one. Here's the top. It came out very like primary color like, and I'm not so sure about that. Here's the back. And now let's talk pros, cons, and user error. Pro, I do like how easy and simple the instructions are. The walkthrough was really nice. It was very much a very good step-by-step. If you're fairly new to sewing, like this is one of your first projects, it does help a lot. It helps with like the idea of quilting and things like that. And because you're doing all 3 layers together at once, it kind of really reduces your sewing time. Yeah, I have to say that I've always been a little uncertain about it because I really hate the sample photo that they show. It doesn't really speak to me very well, but I do like them a little bit better in person. I also really like the size of them, and for their purpose, I think they're going to be really, really great. Cons. If you've never worked with bias binding, this is not that much fun. Overall, I don't like them. I picked them and I made them and everything went really well. It all worked out quite nicely, but I don't like them, and that's a con for me because I made them and I'm going to see them every single day. And yeah, I don't know if I'm like a fun shape kind of person. So that's a personal preference though over anything else. User error. There's quite a bit. You can see there's a pull right here. That I'm not even sure how that happened. I'll clean it up. It'll be fine. You can see the binding is puckered in places. I thought that I fixed that on this second one because the second one lays a lot flatter than the gray one does. But there's some puckering. The binding, as always, isn't as perfect as I would like it to be. I don't even really like the quilting either because like they end at different points, and I wish that I had just quilted it all the way up. Like even though you're doing like this center row first, right, you could have quilted it from like top to bottom and you'd have like a cleaner quilting on the back, and you wouldn't be able to tell on the front because these longer strips go first. So I don't know if that's a con or a user error or what, but I really wish that I had just continued the quilting up. When I made the first one, I thought that to myself, that I should really bring the quilting all the way to the top, but I didn't on the second one either. This one doesn't sit as flat either. With the upstairs one, I trimmed around the edges. Like I trimmed put like little slits on the curves and stuff so that this would sit flatter. So the upstairs one sits flatter than the downstairs one. There's a definite curve to the downstairs one, to the gray one. I'm not going to go back and fix it because, like I said, it's just for me. The bias binding on this one could be a lot nicer too. For some reason, my sewing machine started skipping when I was putting this one together. So like I have some skipped stitches on this. I have a lot of skipped stitches on this. What I might end up doing is going back and fixing and changing out my iron and doing new bias binding on all of it because of the skipped stitches. The other thing too is especially in this gray one, some of my sections didn't line up as nicely where they were supposed to, so I ended up doing a bit more scant in the seam allowances, and because of that, right here, this here is all coming loose, and I did a zigzag all along it, right? Like on the top here, you can see that there's a zigzag stitch. And that's to hold these two pieces together. You can see it really well on the back here, that there's a zigzag holding all of this together. And that's because as I was working with scrap, I had to do some piecing. Speaking of piecing, right, I had to piece here, down here I had to piece here, and I had to piece here. Here you can see a whole skipped stitch area here. But my miters are really nice on this. I took the time to really concentrate on mitering my edges. So those two corners and this one are really nicely mitered. So that's a positive. I think that's it. I didn't have any issues with this one because the pieces were just bigger and I had more fabric to work with because I wasn't working with scrap. But yeah, I think that's it. That's all I really want to talk about with this. I did trace this out on some tracing paper, or on some pattern paper, freezer paper, tracing paper. I don't know. I have something upstairs that I use to cut out patterns on. So I did trace the shape out. So I might try to make this again. And if I did, I wonder if instead of quilting it through both layers, if I would just quilt it through one layer, and then skip the bias binding all together, and treat it like I do like my cat coasters or the mug rugs or anything like that, where you like make your top, you sew your bottom on with like a little hole in the corner or a hole somewhere, so you flip it around, iron it, and run a top stitch around all of the top. Having it finished that way rather than with the bias binding. I hate bias binding, but I guess that's for future. So yeah, let's just part 4 this, final thoughts, and go. Like I said, I don't know if I like these. I don't like this one at all. I feel like it's too primary colory. It looks nice, like the colors look good together and everything, but it's just, it's not me. It doesn't speak to me. This backing speaks to me. I love that, but I don't, and like you can see how nicely the colors work with the backing, right? But I don't like it. I also don't like this yellow binding. I wanted something softer in the creamiers, but they were all sold out at Joann Fabrics when I went. So yeah, I am happy to have them, right? They're machine washable. They're gonna sit underneath the water fountains as a second layer of protection, because Susie likes to dig in the water fountains and she's making the floors just a mess. So I'm gonna have like a waterproof placemat under as our first layer. Then I'm going to have this as like an absorbency layer, and then I'm going to have the fountain on top of that. So I think it's going to work. But here are photos with it underneath the cat food dish, because that looks prettier, because the fountain's too big. But yeah, will I make this again? I don't know, but if I do, there will be definite changes. And if I do remake it, it's just going to be a project revisit next year, probably. After having sat with it for a year, I'll know better what I like and what I don't like, and if I want to change anything. But that's it, because I need to get my house a bit ready for trick-or-treaters. They're going to be here in about an hour. So my night is trick-or-treaters. Hopefully we get a lot. My first year here, we had a massive Halloween display just down the street from us. Like, we live, we're the first house in off of a busy road. Like, we live in a very nice and quiet neighborhood, but we are on one of like the main arteries in our town. And for years there was this giant skeleton set up, and the family went all out for Halloween. So our first year we had like 150 kids come to our door. It was also 2021, so they got to like experience Halloween, right? Because the year before it had been canceled. So it was a really big deal. But that family moved last year, and so they didn't have a big Halloween setup, and we had a lot less kids. We only had like 40 kids, I think, maybe 50. I had a lot of Halloween candy left over, because I ran out the first year, so I overbought for the second year. And then the house, like, the people moved out of their house, so then I was like, oh, there's not going to be any kids. And my neighbors don't really do Halloween. Like, I'm the only one with decorations in my top little corner here. So like, the people on our corner, they moved out, so that house is empty. The neighbors right across from me, their neighbors, right, are lovely people, but they're from South Africa. They don't celebrate Halloween. Their neighbors are older as well, and they tend to go to their grandchildren's houses to experience Halloween with them, so they're not home. Then across the street from them is a lovely gentleman who does give out candy but doesn't decorate. So he just sits there with, like, in a chair on his driveway handing out candy, but if you didn't know he was there, you wouldn't normally see him. And then the neighbors from next door to them, my direct neighbors, are also a very lovely couple, or a lovely lady and her family. They don't do Halloween, and then it's me, and I'm excited for Halloween, but because I'm so worried that nobody else is doing Halloween, I just have like my purple cat set up with some purple lights, but I didn't go all out because I'm really afraid that the top of my street, where I live, is going to be so dark that I'm not going to get a lot of kids. So all of that babbling to say, I'll let you know in whatever video I filmed after this, going up sometime next week, whether or not I got any kids. So, or maybe in the comment section I'll mention it, or in the description box, somewhere along the lines, because I rambled on about this for so long. I'll let you know how many kids I got. But anyway, well, that was quite the tangent. If you would like to hear more tangents that have nothing to do with any of my videos, think about subscribing. I am small but mighty. I enjoy subscribers, and I enjoy comments, and let me know in the comments if you had any kids, or if you do Halloween or any of that stuff. I'd be curious to hear what else is going on around the place. And with all that being said, I'm going to go like the video if you liked this foray into quilting as you go. I have 2 totes too. Let me know if you want to see me make those up. And if there's interest, I'll try to get them up sooner. If there's no interest, I'll wait until December or January or February to make them. And yeah, gotta go. So thank you so much for watching, and I will talk with you again soon. Bye!